I just have it queued up.
Hello, everybody. It's Ed Parco and Brian Galke, who likes to mess around with stuff right as we go live.
It keeps life interesting.
All right. So, as you know, we're ACES53, which has to do with 4 aces and a joker that I learned about in college. As you can tell, that was a long time ago. It's when we had carbon paper and stuff like that, real fax machines. Got real fax paper out of the machines. And basically what it stands for is attitude, commitment, enthusiasm, and smile. The 4 things that you bring to the table every time you get into sales. I just thought I turned off all these notifications. And the joker is that unique ability you have that you bring to the table that nobody else has. For me, I sold by the phone for years, and it's all about, okay, one of these days I'll stop this thing. Sorry, I was like, I have to go in every time and shut off those notifications. They come on every time. So I'll do it.
Hard being so popular, Ed.
It's not that. It's like telling me I'm going live everywhere. Like I need to know this. Anyway, so the joker, mine was my voice because I sold by the phone for years and other things. And then, since then, of course, it's my beauty helps out a lot. But that could be your unique ability.
Right.
That is, a lot, but there's whatever it is that is yours, that's your joker. And that's what we want to talk about. So go ahead. What do you have to say today? You've been gone last week a lot.
Right. Well, no,
you're going to be gone next week a lot.
Yeah. So I gave you some quality time with Joe, and then I hung out with Joe all weekend in Vegas. So that's some of what we're going to talk about.
It was nice to finally get to know Joe and talk to him. And I said, I hear everything about you. And he goes, so do I from Brian. And he goes, yeah, I hear the same thing from Brian about you. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But anyway, we had a great conversation about scripts last week. Even though I was bombarded on Facebook about how they're not important and people don't believe it, I don't care. Everybody has an opinion,
right?
And that's why the world goes around.
Well, and I have a funny video that I was going to show on that. This is what I think people think scripting is like.
Did you get it from the beginning yet?
I got to go back. Good call.
God, Jesus, boy.
I know.
Good afternoon. My name is Russell, and I am a wilderness explorer in Tribe 54, Sweat Lodge 12. Are you in need of any assistance today, sir?
And so that's what most people think scripts are.
Right. There you go.
There we go. That's what most people think of when you say script, is that somebody reading robotically from a book, from, a cheat sheet, whatever it is. But in reality, most things in life that are important are scripted. We talked about it before. We've both married people, right? So you have a script that you run through.
You mean we? I was like, yeah, we both were married before.
No,
we were the officiant of a marriage.
I was the ordained minister. I don't know what your title was,
but that's still the officiant of the.
But with that, most important things in life, people rehearse before they talk. And that's why it's so odd that people get upset about scripts. They think it was like that, where the kid's reading directly off of the book, one page at a time.
Well, that's because people do that.
There are people, usually they're the novices, the people who just get into things. And just spent 2 days in Vegas with people who teach door-to-door solar sales, you name it. Actually, Joe got to speak, and he did a really good job. I'll send you the video. So I spoke on day 1, Joe spoke on day 2, and a lot of it was about having scripts and knowing your product inside and out. And that's where people get lost, is they think, oh, I'm good enough, I'll just wing it. And by scripts, it can be a ton of things. So is it bullet points?
I'm laughing because here's your scripts.
Exactly.
I put a bullet point.
That's exactly it. But even when I was in sales before, they said, never call a customer without knowing what you're going to call them about. So you could say it's a script, but I would write down on my whiteboard desk here, what am I calling this person for? What's the end goal of the call? And is there anything I need to bring up? Because you can get easily distracted talking to people. And so you have to have a goal no matter what type of sales you're doing. Right. And so if you want to call it a script, it's more of just how do you prepare? Because you can tell when people are not prepared for sales or for anything. When people show up and try and wing it, if you've ever been to a wedding where the bride and groom decide to just make up their vows on the spot, how awkward was that? Versus it's something important. So what do? They pull out their notes.
Right.
Same thing, best men speeches. What is it? Bridesmaid speeches. Most people wrote it down because it's important to them. And that's no different than the sales process.
And it's because I liked last week where it was brought up that scripts turn into a guide. And that's where like I am in life, where I don't even have to have a script because I've said it so many times,
Right.
but I do Columbo it sometimes. You know what I mean? Like Columboing it. Some people might never seen that. It's like, okay, goodbye. Oh, by the way, did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, because a lot of times when you were talking about, there's nothing worse than winging it, because you'll forget something and then you have to call the person back and say, oh, by the way, I forgot this, and the whole process. When we talk scripts, it's important to have what you want to talk about, know everything in there. It should be at a point, I brought this up last week, that your script should handle all your objections that you've ever come across to that point. Right. And that should be worded in exactly perfect.
Setting me up with my banners here.
Oh, I didn't even look at your banners.
I know.
This is what we talked
That's
about.
what I like.
I say this all the time. And I got this from Zig Ziglar back in the day. He talks about objections, and I want to get in. Maybe that's what we talk about next week. How to get, how to set up objections so that you don't have to really, there's nothing wrong with objections, because that means there's a sales process going.
Yes.
Right. But if you hit them ahead of time, then you'll get all the way through your presentation and what you're working on. And then they're like, we have no questions. Yes, we want to move forward. And that's the call to action that you want to talk about.
And that's one of the things they talked about this past weekend in Vegas was every objection you should write down. And then you can add it to your talking points later on, because there's a common.
Did they steal my talk?
Yes, they did. I recorded it and sent it to them. It was great. But yes, that's the whole thing is, if you hear the same objection more than once, add it to your script, address it up front, because if not, people are worried about it the entire time. And that anticipation builds. And that's what the downside of scripts are. People don't make it interactive conversations if they get too stuck onto a script. And that's why we said you can have bullet points, make sure you talk about everything you need to, but it still has to be an interaction. The script is just helping guide the interaction with where you want to go.
And I totally agree that, because and I want to keep saying that's how I do it. That's how I do it. But I've had a client just recently who was like blowing up my, like for them, it was blowing up my phone. They text me, he's not calling me back. I'm sorry, but it take me an hour, because as important as you are as a client to me, unfortunately, you're not my only client. So sometimes we're in meetings and we can't. And I try to explain to him, because he is the sales he does. I'm like, you're on a client sale. You're not going to take my call, right? While you're talking to them. No, I said, and then sometimes you don't have time between that one and the next call. But then sometimes you like occasionally do, and you can make a phone call, and then people go, oh, he can call me like all the time now. No, it worked out that way. So you have to understand. And so one of his questions was, I had hit it already in my whole presentation, but he didn't remember it, even though I hit it twice. So even though you do give those objections in there, they might still come up because they're so focused on everything in the process instead of everything you're saying.
Right. Are you there?
Right. I'm here.
Yeah, it's cutting in and out. So most likely my internet. Fun stuff here.
You're good on my side.
Yeah, it just all of a sudden went dead for a minute. But you're right. I still don't understand why people are so anti-scripting.
Because one thing Joe said is, if you want to be consistent with your income, you need to be scripted. Well,
not only, here's the other reason it needs to be scripted, because you have to create standard operating procedures if you're ever going to grow anything. So SOPs, however you want to refer to it. Just because you can wing it doesn't mean the next person you hire can wing it as well. And if you want to be repeatable and replaceable, you have to have a script that people can follow. And Joe mentioned it on the live that he had the one girl that came to him. She said, this script isn't me. There's nothing wrong with personalizing it, but you still have to have a flow down. And that's how look at every business that is successful, and they have processes in place. It includes some type of scripting, and scripting could even be like when you go buy a car, you talk to the salesperson, then you have to talk to this person, then you talk to this person, the handoff to the service department. All of that is part of a script as well, but it's not what we showed earlier with the good afternoon, I am a wilderness explorer. No, and that's where people get confused. I think everybody fears this right here, and that is, does it sound like me if I'm reading something that I didn't write? And that's where people get confused. Take ownership of it. Even in what I teach, I took my mentor's language, but I had to put it in terms that I use. And once you learn to personalize something, you have ownership of it. And that's the whole thing, is you are part of the sales process. If it was just a script that did this, then email campaigns would outdo phone calls. But people want the personal touch. They want to be able to ask questions. They want to interact with people.
Is that what they want to do?
Yes, it is what they would like to.
Well, I think people just don't, they don't understand scripting to a point of where we're at with it and how it's important. They probably never been in a real sales environment, a sales, I scripted all my people when we created one of the first call centers back in the 90s for mortgages, because you want people to, they never read from it, or you have a VA loan and I can help you. No, that's not what they did. They just know it's there for them. And if you get this objection, here's your answer. If you get this one, here's your answer. If you get this one, here's your answer. You get to a point where then you know all these things and you put them as you're talking to them. And that's, I keep explaining, when we sold by the phone, you call me and I would start I've talked about this many times before. My business partner at that time, we shared the same office, and he was like, dude, you start off the same way and you say the same thing all the way through. I'm like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. And they all out there should be doing the same thing. And then they would sit with me and listen to my calls. Right.
And if you want to go an analogy that maybe people are getting hung up on the word scripting, you can just call it practice, right? Every single sports team, every golfer goes to the golf range before they go to the play on the course. Everybody practices. If you're in sales, then chances are you've done, role play, role reversal, where sometimes you're the customer, sometimes you're the salesperson. You can call it practice if you want, but how is it there? Somebody designs the plays that then the players make out, they have a coach, something of that nature, and then they use what they rehearsed in private, in public. And that's how people succeed. So I don't care if you're talking about speaking on stage. What did I do last weekend? I had 45 minutes on stage in front of 500 people. You better believe I went through my PowerPoint numerous times. So I wasn't going, what's the next slide? Okay. And then.
Well, hold on. You unscripted? Oh, I could love to see that.
Oh, you should have seen it. I was unscripted in San Diego at Secret Knock, and they threw me
the first time.
What's that?
Which time?
This time. But what threw me for a loop was I thought somebody else was going to introduce me, and they said, oh no, go ahead and introduce yourself. And I'm like, I don't know how to introduce myself and then walk out.
That's when you have a thing in the future that plays for you, and you don't have to, welcome to this, put your hands together, welcome for Brian, who is the number one, whatever,
Instead it was like me fumbling, and then I didn't have slides, and I tried to wing it, and that was my mistake. So ask Joe the difference of me last month winging it versus this time knowing it, my slides inside and out, totally different speech.
Right. But if you don't have slides, I've told you what to do. Just grab some people from the audience and you'll be just fine.
Well, the problem was this stage was 6 feet in the air. And the only way to get on stage was to come back through the green room in the VIP area. So that wasn't a possibility on this
Bring out a couple of the other speakers.
Yeah. But I did, for this one, you'll see somebody actually just tagged me in one of the videos, is after we got off stage, I just said, hey, I can't bring you guys up here, but if you want, come outside. That way I wasn't rude to the other speakers. And a bunch of people.
Except when you took the whole audience with you outside.
We took a few. It's kind of a nice thing.
Oh, by the way, I don't want to be rude, but half the audience left to come see what I do.
That's right. But back to what you're talking about, you have to prepare. You put a PowerPoint together, guess what? That's a script. You go to the driving range before you go hit the golf course. That's practicing. That's a script. So why people are so anti, and I love it when people say, oh, I don't need a script, I know everything. Those people are egomaniacs, because everybody needs to rely on something. If not, you're pulling it out of your butt. And how are you going to remember that you hit every point?
Well, I guarantee you that they did in the beginning and they don't now. And so that's why they say, I don't need it now. Well, you've already created your script has become who you are and how you talk on the phone. I don't care if it didn't work for you in the beginning, but you don't like, I'm here. Yeah. I want to buy a house. All right. So when we close escrow, right, you start the same way all the time. All right, well, the first thing we need to look at is your credit, and this is what we look for, blah, blah, blah. You don't jump to the end. You still have that whole process in your head, how you want to talk to somebody, how you do it, because you've done it for so long. Or you do what we do, which is the application close, where that's how we go through the process: name, address, whatever. And sometimes you have questions before we get going. Yeah, what's this? And then you go over things with them. Well, that could technically be you're scripted. You just don't call it that because you're too good for it.
That's what I mean. If people want to call it practice or whatever, and you're absolutely right. There's, for people who don't know, the 4 stages of knowledge is unconscious incompetence. You don't know that you don't know something. And then there's conscious incompetence. Hey, I know I need to improve on this skill, right? Then there's what is it? Conscious
I don't know,
incompetence. I know.
See what happens when you aren't scripted.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the last one is unconscious, or sorry, it's unconscious competence. See? And then the final one is unconscious competence, is where you just do it without thinking about it. But you go from, I don't know what I don't know, to how do I keep improving through those levels until it becomes second nature. And the simplest example that everybody can apply is learning to drive a car. When you first started, you had to think through everything, turn the key, but now it's push button, right? But gas is here, blinkers here, and you learn to slowly drive, and you had to go several times before you went out and actually got a license and could drive by yourself.
Well, actually, I would say more like using a shifter.
Yeah,
that takes practice in the beginning, and then you get to a point where you don't even think anymore. Boom, 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 you're gone. Right. But here's the example, right? If you ever call me up on stage, talk about real estate financing and that kind of stuff, I don't wing it. I could just go, because I've said it so many times.
Right.
You call me on stage, like at Steve's Speakeasy, we talked about sales and other stuff, which I don't talk about all the time.
Right.
I have to be scripted, and I sucked the first time, and I was much better the second time, but still not where I am now. And that's the difference, because even though you can be scripted and you try to remember it, and his situation is you don't get slides, you don't get stuff to fall back on. It's got to be knowledge, and that's the difference. You need to know what you're talking about, and takes time.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing here. We're doing the same thing like we would do on stage, and we're talking about sales, but we're breaking it down in pieces and going through each part to find out what's the most important part for people. And I think a lot of it has to do with, even though we talked about scripts for the last couple of weeks, a lot of people are like, that's not important. And then I have a lot of people go, should you be scripted? Yes, you should be scripted. Right. How do you do that? And I talked to a bunch of people who've been in the business for a while. They're like, I'm not scripted. I was in the beginning. It just didn't work for me. Well, that's because you created your own, right? I think people just, how do I put this? They just don't want to say they were scripted, because that means they don't know something.
Exactly. And that's what everybody's worried about, is everybody thinks you have to be an expert. And that's what we've talked about before. If you go see any comedian, they look like they're just making up jokes on the fly, but they haven't. They rehearsed them, they practiced them, you name it. A lot of people, like, I'm going to pop up, yes, another banner. Like, I have an acronym. So if I can't have slides, I know, okay, FACE, obviously, since that's what I do. It's easy for remember. Did I hit the F? Did I hit the A? Did I hit
what's
the
C? F? What's the A? What's the C? What's the E?
Sure. So find the feature is the F, assess the meaning, convert the meaning, and then express it back to the person. Right. And so I know every time I get on stage, I have that acronym. Guess what? That's a script that I wrote out at one point. So everyone who has a framework has a special course. Bradley got up and talked about one this weekend. I'm looking for it, but it's logic. And it's basically every letter means something. So that's what was that? It was scripted and rehearsed. So he knew anytime if somebody pulled him up out of the audience, like you were just talking about, and said, okay, what's something you want to talk about? He can say logic, and he can go through what each of those letters mean. So it's leverage, obvious, gains. So what are you doing? You're leveraging it. What's obvious? What's the gains? Then intelligence, and then common sense. So he knows when he's talking on that, just has to hit every letter. It's scripted.
Right. And acronyms are great. Like when I talked about, getting past no, KNOW, which has to do knowledge needed to overcome waiting, because a lot of people don't understand why people don't move forward. And when they say no, they're actually saying I need more education. But here's an example, right? I have a property, and we're being sued by our neighbor because they want access. And my attorney goes, whore on every corner. I'm like, what? He goes, that was our acronym in law school to remember for easements, how to remember what part, whether. And I was like, really, a whore on every corner? Okay, well, must be the Bay Area anyway.
Well, this is true.
I don't know.
Shady,
I'm just
shady.
saying, but acronyms work. I
Right.
don't care how it works for you. You need to do it so you don't make a mistake. We have one bite at the apple right now with the amount of sales we have. There is
Mhm.
very limited in a lot of industries now. We had such low lying fruit where you're like, hold on. Let me take your okay. Yeah, hold on. All right, you ready to go? Okay. Now it's like you have to talk to 10 people to get to one. So you have to talk to 100 to get 10 people.
Yes.
Before I talked to 10 people, got 10 people and went on vacation for the rest of the month. Now it's not that way. And so it's important to make sure that you don't mess up, and you need to make sure you have these things in place.
And that's where scripting comes in. Scripting helps build confidence as well, because there's nothing worse. And granted, this is a Zoom call, but if you're talking to somebody face to face and you're thinking, well, okay, what was the next? You don't look confident. Versus if you have your material memorized, you look confident. And if you're on the phone, there's the purposeful pause because you want to bring attention. But if you stop talking and you're just like, the other person, did we get disconnected? What happened? That's why the scripting helps build confidence as well.
Right. And it can be for anything, right? And I was talking to my wife about this and some stuff that had come up, and she's like, we're scripted all the time and everything we do, for her bit, and she works for Kaiser for when they talk to somebody, when they have speeches, when you go speak on stage, like we've been talking about, you have what you want to talk about and you went over it and practice it to where it's second nature. And yes, you should have the 5 things that we talked about before, where if something happens to your train of thought, you have these 5 things to go back to real quick that you've practiced and practiced and practiced to get you back to where you need to be. And I think a lot of people don't understand that is part of scripting. You can't say, I'm not going to be scripted. If you ever go on to speak, you're going to be scripted to a certain point. All we're saying is, what am I going to talk about on this call or whatever it is face to face? How am I going to go through the process? You need to have that process. Because one of the things is in my industry, you can have somebody come in the office. What's the matter? Why are you laughing at me, boy?
No, it's not you. I was laughing. I was thinking, if you're unscripted, you sound like me, and you're ADD, because you don't have a natural flow without some type of script.
Right. Well, whatever works for you. But like, I can have somebody come in the office. It'll take an hour to talk to them, right? Because they get off. I can't control them exactly. But if I'm on the phone with them, 20 minutes, done, move on, because I'm able to, not want to say control the conversation, but have that good conversation with them and take them through the path I want. And then ask them questions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's why I prefer, everyone's like, I met some clients last Friday at escrow, which I haven't went to an escrow for closing in probably 2 years. And the agent's like, oh, you never met them? I'm like, no, we talk on the phone only. You take them out to all the houses. I just meet them on the phone. So you have to have that rapport.
Yeah.
And that's important. And that's what a script will help you do. And if you don't understand this, just give me a call and I can talk to you about it.
Are you going to read a script to them?
Yeah. I'm at troop number 25.
Right.
Yeah. No, but I still get all these voicemails from these people. I'm your new rep at so-and-so. You're just seeing if you have any deals that you need help with. No. Because there's, what do you think? There's a deal sitting on my desk. It's just, I wonder where to put that.
Yeah. I was thinking about that today. I'll tell you.
I couldn't do this one, so it's just sitting here. No, that doesn't work this way. So
this is kind of falls into scripts, but doesn't. You can tell who's winging it when they send you like DMs to try and get your business on stuff like, oh, hey, I really like what you do. I work with this. Can we do work with you? And you follow up. So I like to test people. Okay. Yeah. Well, so tell me, how can you help me in my business? Oh, what business are you in?
Yeah.
You reached out to me. So that should be the thing you figure out. So that's where scripting can hurt someone, right? Is to not have even a follow-up script. So for example, we have a script for if you cold call someone or it's a warm lead or whatever it is, but do you have a script that you can pick up immediately if somebody calls you back? That's where all of this comes into play. Is it's just having repeatable processes. So if you don't want to call it scripting, call it repeatable process that you can personalize. But if you think you're going to wing your way through life, it's not a good plan.
Yeah, I tried that. Doesn't work.
I still do sometimes.
I know. I've seen your travel itinerary.
Yes.
Why'd you go to Arizona? Oh, because I wanted to go to this pool party.
Yeah, I wish. No, it was actually cheaper to fly back Dallas to Arizona and stay over the night than it was fly straight from Vegas to Dallas. Nuts.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I just to get to I was supposed to go to Detroit this week, It was ridiculous. I had to fly to here. There was no direct flight and everything. And it's like, I'm not even going. So, yeah.
Plus,
So it was
look, I got to go hang out with our friend Brian Bogert. So
There you
got
go.
to go see his setup, his headquarters. So I like winging it to a degree. With travel, yes. On
yeah,
stage,
but you were in Florida when you saw
Janine
Martha.
Driver. Oh, yeah. Well, I was with Janine Driver, and then I went over to visit Martha because she was on the way home from the airport.
You're welcome. I reminded you.
I told her that you were the reason I ended up reaching out to her. I said I was talking to you and you asked me was I going to reach out to her. So yes, I am now inspired that when I go anywhere, like, well, because I was in Arizona, so I remembered Bogert lived there, but I forgot who else lives there. Brian Grasso lives there, right?
And you forgot his wife.
Yeah. Well, I always talk to him though, so that's what I was thinking of first. And then Qasim and his wife live there. Right. So many people live in Arizona. I just forget until I'm there. And then somebody was at the last speakeasy. Heather lives out there. So I'm going to make an Arizona speakeasy trip just to go visit because there's like 5 or 6 people that we know that all live in
Are we done with scripts then? Now we're all in your life.
You asked about it. This is the unscripted portion.
No, I just think it's important that we talk about it like we've been doing because it's important. It's part of sales. You have to realize you're in sales.
Yes.
And that's what I talked about last week. It's like there's so many people who are loan officers. So I'm not a salesperson. Yes, you are. I'm a real estate agent. Yeah, you're a salesperson. All right. Understand Everybody. That. You're talking the process. You sell your kid not to run across the street. You sell other people and you sell your boss on why they should give you a raise. You're in sales. You need to practice it all the time.
Right. Well, and one of the things that we didn't talk about that's a side benefit is if somebody has
to get in trouble with side benefits, so I don't.
What's that?
I said I get in trouble with side benefits, so I don't.
Yeah, that's true.
My wife would kick my ass if I had a side benefit.
If you hand off something from one person to another, it doesn't matter what type of business you're in. If you've had a script, then the person who picks it up understands what you discussed. And that's something we haven't really talked about. We've mainly made this focused on how does it help you when you're only selling. But if you have that process, that script, whatever you want to call it, and you transition to some other person. So let's say you take it from sales to field service manager, something who handles it after the fact. That's part of what the script is not that you have to read it, but it's so that the next phase of that customer's journey, they understand what phase 1 covered and didn't cover. And that's, if you think about it, I mean, yes, there's contracts that delineate that information as well, but a contract isn't always what the project is.
Correct. And I just think it's like I was sidetracked for a second, right? And I just forgot everything you said. So because I wasn't scripted. No, but the most important thing about it with scripts, it makes sure that you cover everything you need to cover so that something's not missed or, oh, by the way, I told you get this discount when in reality you don't get this discount, all that stuff. So,
right. So we were just talking, they were talking at the conference this past weekend. And that's what some of the people have as a script too, because not only that, you're filling out kind of like you mentioned before, you're filling out you call it the form. Is that, what is it? You have
application.
The application. Well, they do the same thing when they're selling because what's somebody's deductible? What's the interest rate? How long are they going to do it? Those are all things that help them with the sale later on.
Right. Correct.
So
I lose you for a second there. What are you looking at?
Oh, I was disabling my notifications. They pop back on. I thought I did it for an hour, but it wasn't.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than the notifications, and I don't understand it on Microsoft. You turn them off, and then all of a sudden they're back on as soon as you're done. But I had something pop up I had to reply to right away.
Yeah,
I apologize.
Yeah, that's the downside of my master control here is I got monitor over here, and then the one that we're on. I always end up looking away.
Then we all right. That's basically all I wanted to kind of go over today was to bring up kind of what we talked about last week, scripts today. We'll figure out what we're going to talk about on Thursday. It's a secret, so you're only going to know if you show up or watch it later
to know who the Joker is, right?
That's right. It's a FOMO thing.
It is.
Anyway, thank you for
unscripted.
No, we'll not be unscripted. I guarantee you I'll have a script for them.
Yes.
Anyway, Brian, thanks for being back here. Thanks for showing up. I know you're taking all this time off. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next week I'll take off more.
Yeah. There you go. No, it was nice to have, a guest host and that person being the Joker. And Joe is very informative. You can tell this is what he does for a living. And he was so adamant about how important scripts are because that's what he deals with, car dealerships.
Yes.
And you need to, again, you have these, you're paying for these people to call you and buy cars and stuff like that. You need to be scripted so you can keep them and sell to them and not lose that sell. And I was telling somebody else that if I lose a sell, that could be 8 to 10 grand.
Right.
That's a lot of money to lose just because I was not prepared.
Absolutely. Well, and especially with what Joe does, that's such a highly transitional job. Not, a lot of turnover in staff. What do you do for the new people? You have to have something in place for consistency across the company.
Correct. All right. Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks for watching. And if you like what we do here, go out and share it and subscribe. Go to our channel, ACES53 on YouTube, and subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. That's how you can support us. And again, Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Good seeing you, Ed.
Yeah. Well, don't run away.